later if they weren't able to attend it live. It can also be very handy that they can go back in and re-listen to parts of it if they got distracted during part of the meeting or they weren't able to hear some of the answers. Very handy capability. Okay. The other thing, one of the other things we have in the RMX is the gathering phase. This is an option that you can use. That's nothing more than a checkbox. It allows you to put in more information about your meeting itself. In this case, a product marketing meeting. It's lasting for an hour. It's got 8 people in the call so far. You can also give some help desk information on the call if you want to. This stays up for, by default, 3 minutes, but you have the ability to change those defaults in the bridge itself. That's a bridge-wide change. And at that point, you could, typically for demonstration purposes, I set it up as a minute. Now, if somebody comes in after that first minute of the conference, then what will happen is they will get a shorter time because they need to get into the meeting. Normally, that's set up by default on a minute. I'll usually, for demonstration purposes, set it up to 15 to 20 seconds. Gathering phase, unique to Polycom. I think it's a very nice add-on. It makes the bridge meeting look much more sophisticated. Okay. RMX is a very highly scalable product. Okay. We use resources in our bridge, and you buy the bridge based on how many resources you want to have in the bridge. In this situation, we wanted to give you a comparison between ourselves and our #1 competitor, which is the Kodian 4500 series bridge. We've set up a configuration, ideal or similar configuration between the two boxes. On the left happens to be an RMX 2000 configured with 30 1080p capabilities, which means they have 180 SIF, remember the little squares, SIF resolution capability or ports. Some people call them ports. I like to call them resources. Okay. Now over on the Kodian side, I have 30 up to 1080p ports. Okay, and their 30 ports can handle anything from a SIF call all the way up to a 1080p call. What we do is we add enough resources to build whatever size call you want to have. So let's look at see how that actually works. Okay, I'm going to start out, and you notice at the bottom of the screen I have 180 resources on the Polycom side, 30 resources on the Kodian side. So I'm going to bring in one HD call. That HD call is going to use 3 resources on the Polycom side, and it's going to use 1 port on the Kodian side. Okay. Now I'm going to bring up in a desktop that used SIF resolution, and so it's going to use 1 more port. So now I have a total of 4. And on the Kodian side, I've used 1 more port. And now I'm using a total of 2 ports on the Kodian side, and I've used 4 resources on the Polycom side. Next, I'm going to add a standard definition call. They're going to end up using about 1.5 resources on the Polycom side, and on the Kodian side, they're using another port. And I'm going to keep adding people in. Okay. And lastly, I'm going to add a couple audio people just for good measure, because we always have people on cell phones in the calls. So now we have an equivalent call on both sides. Polycom still has 170.5 resources available. The Kodian side has 24 ports available. That's pretty good. Now, Kodian, I could have 4 more calls, just like this one call that we've set up. Okay? So I have a total of 5 calls going on. On the Polycom side, because we're more frugal with our resources, I have the ability to have a total of 18 calls, just like this, on that bridge at the same time. So I actually have 3.5 times the capacity of the Kodian bridge in this mixed resolution environment. That's pretty good. We think it's a very strong case for Polycom. Now, people say, well, what about in an HD? Just a pure HD call environment. And we go, okay, let's do a comparison side by side. And I'm just going to zing on through because they're all HDs. So now once I have all the HD people in, I have enough, again, for 4 more calls on the Kodian side. Okay, but on the Polycom side, I have the ability for 9 more calls. So I actually have the 2.25 times the capacity that Kodian has in the same environment. Okay, we think it's a very strong statement for Polycom. We think it's a very good statement for Polycom, very good for the customers. So keep that in mind as you're configuring bridges. Simple to access, we use IE as our primary web user interface. We also have a RMX Manager software that downloads from the bridge and allows you to use it to control the bridge. The web interface does beautifully. The advantage to the RMX Manager is it has the ability to manage multiple RMX bridges simultaneously, which can be very handy so you're not constantly moving web page to web page to web page going to a new bridge each time. Within the management, we do have multiple tiers of permissions. Here we have listed the chairperson, and he can manage his own conference. We have an operator who can manage any conference on the bridge, and we also have an administrator. Now I laugh and say the administrator has the ability to fix the bridge. He also has the ability to break the bridge. So be very careful. You don't want everybody to have administrator access to your bridge. In fact, you want to keep that under very tight control. We do have, as I mentioned, a CDR and logging files that are available if you need them. They help you understand the utilization of the bridge, the frequency of calls on the bridge, things like that. Logging files primarily are for tech support. Here's a list of some of the features on the 7.0 bridge. As you can see, there's a long list of features. We're actually up to 7.6, and the most recent feature that was added I mentioned early on, that's the TIP, interoperability with Cisco telepresence systems. 7.6 came along, and it came out this year, 2012, and it adds even more capabilities to our bridge. Now the NPM X cards have been around or the NPM cards have been around. There are 3 generations. There's the NPM card, the NPM Plus card, and the NPM X card. Okay, the X card is the latest. Anything you buy now, 2012 and later, will have NPM X cards, so you'll have the best of the best in that situation. So don't worry about whether you might buy something that has an older card in it. This slide just talks a little bit about the utilizations and where we position the RMX bridges. The 4000 is an enterprise bridge, large bridge, available for, can handle literally 360 video calls simultaneously. That's a lot of calls. That's a lot of bandwidth. The RMX 2000 is available there, and it has half the capability of the 4000. It's an easy way to figure it out. It has 2 cards, the 4000 has 4 cards, and the 1000 has 1 card. So it has 1/2 the capability, maximum, of the RMX 2000, or 1/4 the maximum capability of the 4000. We see the 4000 in the enterprise, we see the 2000 in small to medium business, and we saw the 1500 again on the bottom end of small to medium business, and actually multiple deployments for the 1500, possibly using the DMA to tie them together if that's an available capability that you need. Okay. One of the things that we have in the RMX is the ability to do audio conferencing along with video conferencing. One of the things I laughingly tell people or ask, what's the difference between an audio conference and a video conference? They're the same, just the video conference has video. They're both audio conferences. So virtually anything we've talked about on video conferencing, we can do on audio. And that can be very important. That can help pay for or justify the bridge using some of the audio conferencing capabilities that it has built into the box. So take a look at that and see if that might help you justify a bridge as you're working with people. Here's some more of the capacities between the three units. As you can see, they're pretty large. The 1500, the 2000, the 4000 goes very high. Number of participants in video and audio calls, that's a lot of people. So it's a big bridge. All right, let's talk a little bit about the RMX architecture. The hardware itself, it's based on a server class of hardware called the ATCA architecture. We tried to learn how to do servers better from our MGC days, trying to do it more stable, more reliable. And because of that, we've done some enhancements to the RMX. One of the things is making it much more field maintenance-able, being able to pull everything out the front. We also added something called a shelf management package. That shelf management package gives us the ability to go in, even if the control module is bad, dead, or gone, we have the ability to go into shelf management and actually test, do background testing on all the different other cards that are in there to make sure they're okay. That way we can hopefully fix the bridge the first time when we need to order parts when it's necessary. Here I have an RMX 1500. You can see it's a single U 19-inch wide rack-mounted device. It's not very quiet. None of the bridges are quiet. They're actually pretty noisy. So they really are server room. They're not designed to be in a meeting room. On the back end, you can see we have multiple ports for the IP connections. Those are the ones on the right. The connections on the left are actually the connections used for ISDN. If you're going to do either H320 ISDN video calls or be bringing POTS calls directly into the bridge through a PRI. Those are 4 PRI ports, and it's a daughter card that slides in there, and you order it with the bridge when you order the bridge. The RMX 2000 is really a very similar architecture, except it has 2 of the NPM cards. It has a little different power supply. It's a dual power supply on a single card. It also has a larger fan capacity on the side and the standard control module. Again, all these things are being done trying to be a much more server class piece of hardware. On the back side you have your IP connections, just as you did on the 1500. Those are your basic connections and some lights and serial ports. If you really have to do a troubleshooting into the serial, I've never had to do that, but I'm sure there might be cases out there that's required. The control module itself, in all cases, whether it's the 1500, the 2000, the 4000, as I mentioned early on, they all run the same operating system. They all run the same software, the Linux software. In this case, on the 2000, it actually runs off a compact flash rather than running off a hard drive. That way we reduce anything that's moving in the machine, and hopefully it'll give it more reliability and more durability. Okay. The power supply is in a drawer, as I mentioned, the fans down the side. Last but not least is the big brother. This is the RMX 4000. As you can see, he's a pretty big guy. He really is. He weighs in at a whopping, if he's fully loaded, somewhere near 85 pounds. So don't try to load him or install him by yourself. You're going to need somebody to hold him up as you're putting the screws into the rack. Okay, I have done it by myself, but I kind of cheated. I stripped all the cards out of it and then held it up there. It doesn't weigh very much that way. But be careful. You probably need to have a good helper with you to do this. The front of the panel, you can see there are up to four MPMX cards, and those cards just slide in again from the front. I have a fabric switch, which is a high-speed ribbon or fabric switch going between the 4 cards. And I think it has a 10 gigabyte throughput. It may be more than that, but I remember something about 10 gigabyte. I also have my control module down there, the lower control module, and my fan drawer on the side. On the bottom I have 3 power supplies. You can have up to 3, and they are individually powered. In other words, I have 3 power cords in the back that you'll see on this next image. And those 3 power cords plug directly in to the power supplies themselves. Okay, So you could actually have two of the power supplies coming off one grid, the other power supply coming off a different grid if you wanted to. That's certainly applicable, certainly valid in this situation. On the back would be where the ISDN cards plug in. Again, these are daughter cards that marry into the MPM Plus cards or X cards that are plugged into the front. And they have the ability to plug up to 9 PRIs